while, fentanyl was all over the news. But news stories fade, and too many people think that means the fentanyl crisis is over. That couldn't be more wrong. Fentanyl continues to flood into our communities and take lives every day. Young people are overdosing, families are being shattered, and the threat is far from over.
There was never a dull moment when he was here. Always made us laugh with something silly he said. Apart from the jokes and the laughs, he had the biggest heart. He kind of always knew it all. He always had the answers. Was book smart. Just enjoyed spending time with his family. He was athletic. He loved to run track, play football, basketball, you name it. He did it all. My favorite memories, I have to say, is just watching him play football.
Our son, 17, he went to Desert Mountain High School. He transferred there his senior year from Saguaro High School to graduate with some of his kindergarten friends. Our son had just started his job at Chipotle that weekend. And that weekend, we had already had a commitment to go to a quinceañera for one of my wife's family members. We were driving back from Yuma, that's where the quinceañera was at. And as we're driving, one of my wife's friends noticed that there was a lot of activity within the neighborhood. She noticed that there was a lot of vehicles that were near our house, police vehicles, official vehicles. So she contacted my wife. At that point, my wife was on the line, and she talked to the officer and said, please let me know what's going on. She's my friend, I'm concerned. And that's when he went ahead and told us to pull over to the side of the road and told us that they had gotten a call. Noah was unresponsive, and in the process of giving him CPR, they've determined that he had already deceased. At that point, as a father, time stopped. There was a sense of hopelessness because you can't do anything at that point.
For us, it was important once this happened to Noah was just to go out there and share our family story with everyone, because people were listening, and we wanted them to know that, that it's out there, that, it's easily attainable through social media apps, through even friends.
He acquired these pills from a friend. At that point, he was under the inclination that he was getting Percocet, but from what we understand, he paid for 5 pills for $25.
We talk to our kids. We have a friendship. Like Gus said, Noah was his best friend, and so those conversations happened.
It's not something that we ever expected to have happened, especially with our kids not showing this signs of drug abuse or anything like that. We have to come to the realization that, one pill will kill. If you're not getting it prescribed from a doctor, one pill will kill.
Understanding fentanyl's deadly risk is just one part of the picture. But to truly grasp the scale of the crisis, we also have to look at where this danger is coming from and just how widespread it really is.
The number one drug threat here in Arizona and Maricopa County is without a doubt fentanyl. We're all aware that there was a rise in opioids, and so that started out with pharmaceutically prepared opioid prescription medications that were abused. After that, however, that was the rise of fentanyl. Fentanyl is a drug that is extraordinarily cheap for drug trafficking organizations, the cartels, to manufacture and distribute. It is also extraordinarily addictive.
When you talk about fentanyl, it's the blues or the M30s. Started out again as oxycodone and oxycontin, but now they're counterfeiting Adderall, Vicodin, anything with the fentanyl derivatives can be put into.
Fentanyl is almost entirely coming from Mexico. That its origins, or the precursor chemicals, are brought to Mexico from China, And in Mexico, those precursor chemicals are then manufactured into its most common form, which are the pressed blue pills that we so commonly see now.
And if people could see how these pills are made down there, and there isn't any quality control or research and development, it's truly people mixing 5-gallon buckets over an open flame. And there isn't any quality concern. One of the pill can have 50% fentanyl, another can have 2%, and you never know what you're getting in one of these pills.
The Mexican cartels then take those pressed pills and they smuggle them somehow, in various ways, across the border. And usually they go to stash houses, whether that be in Tucson or commonly here in the Phoenix metropolitan area. From those stash houses, they either get distributed locally or, very commonly, they'll get distributed to other parts of the United States where the fentanyl is worth more money. Police seizures of fentanyl it's gone up year after year, and that's directly correlated with the demand for fentanyl, the price of fentanyl being so low that because of that demand, the cartel is satisfying that demand by flooding the marketplace here in Maricopa County with more fentanyl pills. By far, here at MCAO, our prosecutions are fentanyl and methamphetamine more than any other drugs. Fentanyl really picked up quickly, and it was around the 2018 mark where we started to see a rise in those submittals coming from our police partners, and of course, prosecutions related to fentanyl. MCAO is a very large organization, so in regard to what types of prosecutions we have in regard to fentanyl, we have everything across the board. So we see everything from the smallest to the largest. That person with a single pill or a few pills for their personal use, our primary goal as a prosecution agency is to try and get them treatment so that they can kick that addiction and they can become contributing members of society without that drug addiction. Now, the cartel cases, on the other hand, are very different. Those are people that are victimizing our community, bringing these poisons into our community and doing it for monetary gain. Our goal with them is not treatment. Our goal for them is to try and deter future activity like that through things like prison sentences. There are a lot of crimes that come out of drug trafficking. Just like other areas of our office, we are trying to target through prosecutions certain types of criminal activity that are not only bad on their own, but have other effects throughout our communities. It's all about community safety.
First responders see fentanyl and the result of fentanyl overdoses all the time. Here's a look at what they do and what you can do when a fentanyl overdose hits close to home.
The city of Phoenix leads the entire Maricopa County in terms of overdoses, and it appears as if we respond on more overdoses every year. Overdoses, they can be accidental or they can be intentional. Sometimes an overdose is the fact that the person who is taking the drug or the medication doesn't even know what they're taking. Sometimes there can be things hidden inside of what they're taking that they don't even know about. It's a traumatic event for anybody who's there. For the patient who overdosed, that's a scary event because a lot of times they are on the brink of death when we arrive on scene. For any loved ones, family members, bystanders, that's just as scary because they're assuming the worst in the overdose. Fentanyl is addictive and it's dangerous. It doesn't take many uses of fentanyl until your body is craving that in your system. Dangerous in terms of that it affects people differently depending on your size, whether you have a tolerance to the drug. So it could be the slightest, smallest amount of fentanyl that could produce a toxic overdose. If you think for any reason at all that it's an overdose, immediately call 911. If you have access to Narcan, use it prior to the fire department arrival. The best way to administer it for just the general public is a nasal administration. So it'll be one spray into the nose and then allow the patient some space so that that drug can kick in. It's a single dose application. It's 4 milligrams of Narcan. And what it's going to do is it's going to dry up the receptor cells that are being affected by any type of an opioid overdose, fentanyl, or any other type of drug. You'll never be in trouble for calling 911, especially if you think there's a legitimate emergency. In terms of the Good Samaritan law, that basically says that if your intention is help then you are covered by the Good Samaritan law. Fentanyl is throughout the entire city, unfortunately, and we see it in all areas of the city. So the best thing we can do is respond to it appropriately.
As you can see, fentanyl is everywhere. To combat the problem, we need to focus on the people who face the highest risk, and that's our teenagers. For them, the danger of fentanyl is compounded by confusion, curiosity, and mental health struggles that often go unseen.
Kids are dying from their first choice, first mistake. They are getting counterfeit pills from a friend. So they think this is somebody that I know, this is somebody that I trust, and they trust whatever they're being given. And unfortunately, that is laced with fentanyl. The most common thing that we see is anxiety and depression. I think a lot of the other mental health challenges is stress that comes from either academic stress, family stress, or even stress from social media. Teenagers feel emotions a lot stronger than I think we do as adults. And so I think in not knowing exactly how to deal with that, they do seek out external things to help cope. So there's a little bit of normalization in our society about pills and substances, but then there's also trying to medicate something else going on, whether it is some pain that they're feeling and they're self-medicating, depression, anxiety. Anxiety is a huge reason why we hear from teens in our programs why they sought out substances. It was to self-medicate. We also have the students who are top performers and very stressed, and they want to make sure that they stay on top of their grades, and they hear that there are certain pills out there that might be able to help them stay focused or stay awake longer to study. The brain development for a teenager, they don't have their prefrontal cortex totally developed. When the brain is developing and you introduce substances, it rewires the pathways in the brain where they're actually going to be more at risk of struggling with addiction in their life because their brain is being wired for that pleasure reward system and the chemicals are kind of being imbalanced. I can speak personally as somebody in recovery. I struggled with addiction in my teenage years. I stopped using when I was 19 years old. So I actually was still able to have the back end of my brain development protected. But even then, because I did use for multiple years during my teenage years, I introduced substances and I introduced addiction pathways into my brain that I have to be careful still as an adult because I am just more susceptible to addictive behaviors. Parents know their kids the best. And so if their gut is going off and they do feel like there's something more going on, explore that, ask more questions. Some of the things that you can look for are changes in behavior. So sleeping too much or not enough, eating too much or not enough, changes in peer groups, a change in grades. If they stop doing something that they like to do and they didn't replace it with any new hobby or activity, changes in appearance as well. If they're complaining about headaches a lot and stomach aches a lot, sometimes that can be a physical sign of anxiety or depression. Sometimes boys have a harder time communicating their feelings, and so their depression and anxiety comes out in forms of either anger or in physical ailments where they do complain of like, oh, my stomach just hurts or my head hurts. Any time is a good time to talk to kids about substances. It can be an ongoing question around, hey, tell me about this. Have you ever heard of fentanyl? Have you ever been offered a pill at school by anybody? Or have any of your friends ever been offered something? Have you ever seen anything like this online? I think finding times to have conversations, and particularly if they're about uncomfortable things, maybe doing it when you're not necessarily face to face, but side by side. If you're just riding in the car rides can be a magical place to have conversations. Also just walking, going somewhere, doing something where you're side by side and you can just talk without having, to make that eye contact, which sometimes can make teenagers a little uncomfortable. So we are all about prevention at Not My Kid. We call it upstream prevention. It's said that every dollar spent in prevention saves like $7 in treatment. And so if we think about that, just not from the impact that it makes in somebody's life where it can literally save a life, but just the impact that it can make in our community. One of the biggest things parents can do is help put things into perspective that what teens are going through today is not the world that we grew up in as teenagers, and to help understand a little bit more about how they might be feeling, and to support their kids in creating a supportive environment that it's not all on them.
I hope our online video forum has been helpful to you. Please take what you've learned and spread the word about fentanyl and the dangers it brings to our community. We have more information and resources on our website at Maricopa County Attorney, all one word, .org. And please take this information and talk to your kids. One pill can kill, but one conversation can save a life. Thank you for your time.